as a high mound, and plant not pine, but like evergreen broadleaf trees that can develop root systems much deeper, and the trees can grow much higher, like 20 meters, 30 meters, or even more over the next several decades. With this, this is another issue that we still need to demonstrate more scientifically. But basically, Professor Miyawaki argued that this wooden deck would not really receive the tsunami impact instantly in the flat plate. So it has receives the tsunami impact in multiple points in a different time zone, so that it would reduce the impact. And he argued that this provides a much better resistance to the tsunami. When tsunami goes back, then the tree could survive, and it could hold the houses, people's going into the oceans, and it gives protections. With these ideas, he was arguing that probably this green deck would provide a better protections to tsunamis. And Japan has traditions called Igune, like planting trees around the big houses, in the, particularly the agricultural areas, and this like a woodland surrounding the house provides a multiple benefit, including like a typhoon protections, providing some non-timber products. But in the urbanizations or industrialization processes, these woodland called Igune has been also disappearing. If we look at, for instance, the website, I have found, for instance, a number of anecdotes that actually the victims of this tsunami or their friends have written some anecdote that, for instance, Mr. Naoya Sato, 31 years old, was drawn by tsunami with 4 other family members, but he was stuck with a tree and survived. So there are a number of anecdotes that they say that trees saved me. And this kind of anecdotes, you may say that 20,000 or compared to 200,000 people killed in the ocean tsunami, you may say that it may be small. But if it includes your family members or your relatives or friends, you feel that maybe something better could have been done to provide a better protections. But when this idea came out, Professor Miyawaki shaking hands with all the politicians and decision makers, they all said, "Oh, wonderful idea, wonderful idea," but it never implemented. Why? Because waste management laws in Japan does not allow like burying of wooden waste without incinerations on the ground. That such a wooden waste probably contains some toxic substances, and incineration is imperative for the landfill. Some people say that, oh, if you put the wooden waste in the soil, maybe methane gas would come out and it can be a fire. Or they may say that the land may subside and it may create some dangers to the people who may walk around. The concrete is much stronger than the wooden deck or green decks. We should have concrete decks. All the areas, it used to be private property, so it's very difficult to have a kind of agreement that now, as the government hasn't yet bought the land areas in the communities. Seedlings, pines, cedars, so many companies are producing the seedlings, but broadleaf trees like bolen, oak trees, they don't have traditions of producing seedlings. And the budget was earmarked, for instance, only to finance the construction of concrete decks. So Rikuzentakata, this was photos before the disasters. You see this green part here, that was pine trees stripes. And white sand beach, green pine, was a prototype of Japan's scenic beauty. But after the disaster, actually land subsided here. So the land areas where the pine and beach existed disappeared. It went down on the oceans, and so many areas are inundated. And now they say that these are the zone with high risks of the tsunami that may come next 200 years, 300 years, we don't know. But people are saying that is it really wise to reconstruct concrete and try to place the people live again in these areas? These are the questions that people are discussing. So the Rikuzentakata city has developed a reconstruction plan. They still have like green areas that they say like pine woodlands. This part a bit smaller for you to see, but I'm sorry. They basically construct concrete dikes, and on the ocean part they allow like a plantation of pine trees and sand beach restorations. On the inland side, they create a kind of mound, and there they say that it is possible to plant green, evergreen, broadleaf trees, which is slightly different from what Professor Miyawaki was suggesting. This is the extended images that the pine land, dikes, mound, road, railway, main road, this and this part is the ocean. So this is basic ideas. This green dike, this has potentials, but also face some oppositions. Concrete dike was suggested at the first instance in the reconstruction process, so it's now difficult to bring in new ideas. The concrete dike construction idea was there, so it is difficult for the government to change it. And there are also like advocates to plant pines. Pines, they say, do not develop a root system in deep, doesn't provide strong resistance to the tsunami, yet some people have still a nostalgic attachment to the pine trees, that they don't really want to see any other trees other than pines. Waste, governments are saying that they should be disposed within 3 years. If we say that we will construct a dike and use debris, waste may be left there for more than 3 years. So there's a conflict between this waste management time frame, over the time frame. And then the pine seedling is being collected and promoted, but the non-pine tree species such as laurel or oak trees, they are not really produced. So the social capacities to produce the seedlings other than pines are not there yet. That has to be developed. So this is a photo that I have taken just last week. They have already started producing seedlings of the pines, so they are happy to do it. But when we said, why don't we also produce seedlings of the laurel trees, for instance, they said, I like pines. Pine have to be there. So there is a kind of persistence to the traditional or conventional perceptions that the beach in Rikuzentakata has to consist of white sand and pine trees. They don't want to see anything else. Japanese Forestry Agency has made a kind of announcement that they are agreeing to allow the burying of the wooden waste. I'm sorry that some of the parts are written in Japanese, but basically the idea is to allowing the burying of the wood waste, but it is limited still to the lumber, not the wooden waste, but the lumber, mainly the trees that fell down, and they know that they are not containing any hazardous substance. But the wooden waste, it was not allowed to bury in these areas. So what Professor Miyawaki did, he have made a kind of agreement with the town mayor called Otsuchi, and also made a partnership with Yokohama GOM, the private companies, to do the pilot project. The government said that if it's not full-fledged operations, if it's just pilot test experimentations, no problem, you can do it. So what they did was that they have identified the sewage treatment center of the Otsuchi town, that is a public land, and they have identified the rivers where the tsunami actually went up and devastated the areas. So this part, they have identified to build this kind of mound about 4 meter height on top of the 2.8 meters existing dikes, and planted trees on it. The content of the dike was about 40% of the 40% is waste, soil waste with debris, 40% with the diameter 20-50. This is less than 20 millimeters. Concrete waste 10%, wooden waste 10%. They have organized tree plantation event. 543 persons participated, including the former Japanese Prime Minister, Mr. Ohkawa, and planted about 3,400 tree seedlings. They have identified a number of potential benefits, and they are observing how this kind of tree dikes, green dikes, can be accepted by the local peoples and the people outside. Another project Professor Miyawaki has done was in Iwanuma. They have identified a city park where the tsunami also hit, and they have mobilized over 1,000 people, planted 6,000 trees with the same method. These are similar content of concrete waste, soil sediment, and lumbers, but no wooden waste of the construction materials. They have the idea of Millennium Hill project, which is very different from concrete dikes. It's like a green areas in a non-disastrous period. It can be used as a park. For the disaster, it can function as dikes to protect the people. One anecdote I want to mention was this tragedy of Okawa Elementary School. This school actually the tsunami killed 74 children out of the 78 children present at the time of the disaster. What happened was that this elementary school was just in front of the hills, and if children just climbed by 6 meters or 7 meters, they could have survived. But this school, far away, about 4 kilometers away from the ocean, was not designated as disaster-prone, tsunami-prone areas. So they have never done evacuation drills. So they are doing like mushroom harvesting as a part of the school curriculums. But because they have never used these areas for evacuation drills, at the time of tsunami warning, teachers didn't know what to do. School children asking whether they could evacuate on the mountain, but teachers said, no, stay here. And then 74 children were killed. So the idea was really to combine this ecosystem management and disaster prevention and evacuation drills. This is not specific only to these areas. My town called Hayama in Kanagawa areas is also facing the oceans, and now the Japan is telling that again they call it the South Pacific trough will attack this mainland part very soon or so. So we are trying to build upon the lessons demonstrated by these Tohoku areas to see what Japan or Japanese societies have to prepare So a number of issues were identified. So the conclusion is really to say that we need to strengthen these multiple functions of the ecosystems, information sharing, and then third point, this nature observation, ecosystem management, evacuation, all have to go together. And then we really need to work on with a wide range of stakeholders to mobilize support to these kind of ideas. We feel that we are not really promoting ecological approach, but we feel that some people are excluding this ecological approach from the options for our considerations. We are only focusing on civil engineering approach. We are not even having a hybrid approach. So that's why we are advocating that this potential of ecosystem approaches has to be at least the major part of the reconstruction process. This is what I want to share with you based on the Japan experience. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, I think that was an excellent presentation, bringing together many of the things that we discussed this morning in a very good case studies of economics, the partnerships, hybrid approaches that we were discussing, bottom up and top down. Please, questions or comments on this presentation?
I have one technical question. You said that pine trees, they have a shallow root system. But is that typical for the pine trees, or is that typical for the place where they were growing? So if you put pine trees on the hills, would they then make this pen root system? So you could combine this thing. You still have pine trees, but with a pen root.
So there are different scholars who are arguing that the pines have potential of developing root systems when if they are planted on the kind of mound.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, there was other people said that no, pine doesn't really develop the root system even they are planted on the mound. The reality was that all the pines are planted on the coastal areas where the underground water is just 2-3 meters high. So actually there was no evidence so far in that area that the pine trees can develop the root systems. Same thing can be said to the evergreen broadleaf trees. So creating the mound was the imperative for any tree species to develop the root systems. But we have to demonstrate whether pines can develop the root system much deeper, or there's a limit in the pines to develop the root systems. This is something I think we still need to see the scientific proof.
In Japan, generally, pine trees live in place with a shallow soil system. So basically, in terms of above ground biomass and below ground biomass, pine trees have more biomass for above ground, which means like shallow system compared to broadleaf trees. But I think the most important reason that people have used the pine trees for coastal plantation is resistance to sea salt. I mean exposure to sea salt. And I don't think that broadleaf trees, which is mainly from southwestern part of Japan, some of them are resistant to sea salt, but I don't think many of the species can actually survive to exposure to sea salt. After strong wind comes from ocean to inland. So I think I think it's important to prove that those species can survive in that condition. And actually those species are already, most of the species are from southwestern part of Japan, not a dominant but major type of species from a vegetation type in that devastating area. And the first type is totally different between north and south. So actually, I think there are lots of programs to be solved if actually implemented. And also maybe genetic contamination by bringing many seeds or seedlings from other areas is also a concern, because we have a strict guideline to move green seeds or seedlings. And most of the species that I see are originally from south or west. So I think that's why actually many people are against planting broad-leaved trees there compared to plant pines. So in terms of political reasons or like genetic guidelines, there are lots of reasons to support pine plantation in Japan, especially in that northern area.
So this is a point that we heatedly debated at the seminar we organized last July. So there are a group of people who argue, like Professor Mori, but on the other hand, it depends on the time scale that you are looking at. If you are looking at for 30 years, 50 years, if you're looking at 300 years or 500 years, and actually we went to the shrine that stands in front of the oceans, and 300 years of cedar trees is standing. But next to it, this Persian tumbleweeds or the laurel trees, broadleaf evergreen trees, was also there. So Professor Miyawaki was saying that the broadleaf evergreen tree